back to the Zero to Your podcast. I am your host, Denny Dumas, producer Carl. Really, really good. Thanks, Carl. I got a beer in front of me. I got two wicked dudes sitting across the table. How do you go wrong? Let's start by reviewing this beer.
Let's do it.
We got another beer guy. As you guys know, I love beer. And we got a pretty knowledgeable beer guy sitting across from me. How long have you worked in the beer industry? When did you start at Granville Island?
Oh, I mean, like when I got back from college in 2008. So, and not long after that, like less than a year, I started working for Granville Island.
Okay.
Yeah. Started from the bottom though. Like I was like literally packing beer onto trucks, like a swamper. So it's been a long ride for
That's
sure.
how it goes, man.
Yeah. No, it's been good.
And now?
And now working with Strathcona Beer Company, 2.5 years old, and just launching that brand. It's been good so far. Really happy with the beers that we're putting out, which we're about to try, and where we've gotten ourselves to in 2.5 years. I think it's better than we probably had anticipated, and hopefully it just keeps going. Even just
you personally going from throwing pallets around.
Yeah, no, I mean that
a few years ago to now owning a brewery in Vancouver, which is pretty cool.
I could honestly like put it back to. Like I could tell you the whole story, but like literally the whole pivot point of me when it was like, I wasn't sure I was going to do this for long. Like just like every other guy that played college sports, I was going to be a fireman. And that was the plan. And then literally I had a soccer game on Mother's Day, whatever, like however long ago it was, like not long into my Granville career, and I was going to be a fireman, and I bodied a guy, and I turned and he tackled me from behind, and I fell on my hand, and I folded my hand, like broke two of my fingers back on my hand, and couldn't lift kegs anymore, couldn't lift package. And it just so happened that a guy at head office in Granville Island had just been promoted, and they needed an event coordinator, and they were like, well, like just come fill it for a couple weeks. And literally that was it. Like I kind of got into the head office and started to enjoy the industry. I mean, it's a pretty fun industry. I'm sure, you know as well. And yeah, I just never really looked back, and it's just kind of continued from there. So it's pretty funny.
Let's talk about beer one. What do we got here?
This is the premium Pilsner. It's a Czech style Pilsner. It's definitely, I wouldn't call it dumbed down, but we definitely took some of the hop characteristic out of it. We did want it to be as sessionable as possible. A lot of times with some of like the like Pilsner or Kells, some of these they have the noble hops and then the Saz and the Hallertau, and they're very present in the beer. So we definitely toned it back a beer and just tried to make it as crushable as possible. I guess it's a terrible beer term, but it's true.
What's the right politically correct beer term in the beer world?
You know what? I've read articles about like the worst terms in craft beer, and crushable is like number one. But you'll talk to any beer guy from any company 100%. And they'll be like, how crushable is that? Yeah. I mean, that is, we're obviously selling niche beers to a somewhat niche market, but at the end of the day, the number one beer style in the world is light beer. Yellow fizzy stuff, so the closer you can come to that, the more volume you're going to sell. And at the end of the day, like, it's great to make the big crazy, beers, and everyone does it. And it is the fun part of the industry, but you want to make some money. You do need to have that beer that the masses are going to be attracted to. Right. So that's what this beer is. And it is kind of our staple beer for sure.
I want to talk a little bit about beer trends and fads and that kind of stuff, because from a consumer standpoint, which is what I am, or a sampler, I still want a job as a sampler, Carl. Like at Steel and Oak, like they're trying a new beer. It's coming out of the big ass keg things. They need someone with an impartial palate to try it, right?
Absolutely. You do find yourself, it's tough to be impartial, like it really is, because, it's your baby. Like this is your next thing that you're releasing, so it is tough. And I think, not that we've done a better job than anyone else, but like our Beach Radler, which we do in the summer, we sell just so much of that beer. It's crazy. It's really like what kind of put us on the map. And now it's given us the ability to do these other kind of beers, and people, it was kind of a gateway drug for us. The Beach was. And, And I think with that beer, we were really hard on ourselves. The first year we did it, it was just a lemon rattler. And then we were like, there's problems with that. So the next year we did like 15 test batches of it. And we just dialed in the mandarin and the lemon and like, I mean, it was crazy how many times Friday we'd have a tasting and we'd try 5 new samples and be like, that one, but a little bit more. And then he'd take that and he'd split that into 5 more different ratios. Like, we were so serious about getting that beer right. And I think that you have to be that way if you really want to be successful. Like, you can't rest on your laurels, you know, like even that Get Down On It, that one IPA of the year, American IPA of the year in Canada last year. And, we're still looking at tweaking it. But that's the fun part about craft beer, is that when you're Molson Canadian, that recipe has to be the exact same every single time. With craft beer, like you have wiggle room to not change the recipe, but tweak it. Absolutely. You know, modify your hops, modify, you know, how long it ferments for, things like that. Right. So I think that's the fun part about it.
I fucking love the beer industry.
It's pretty fun.
Okay. I guess I should introduce our guest, Carl. Andrew Proctor. This is going to be a mix of like beer talk / a catch-up session, I think, because Andrew and I used to work together on different sides of the industry. I, as most of you know, worked as a bartender manager in some sports bars in Greater Vancouver, and Andrew and I met through his Granville Island work. He was a sales rep for Granville Island for a number of years, moved on to Big Rock. Was that the next step?
Yeah, that was the next step.
And then been with Strathcona for what?
2.5 years.
Been open for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
I'm great.
Great to see you.
But I'm pumped to be here. Honestly, it's funny to be here for sure. It's cool to see you on this side of things for sure.
We're popping Andrew's podcast cherry tonight, so I'm pretty pumped about it.
Be gentle.
And he brought the beer. So,
so we
are starting with the Pilsner. We're gonna go to
the Pale Ale.
All that and then some Pale Ale. And then the Big Sexy Funk IPA. And the Get Down On It IPA. A+ for creativity on the names.
Totally. No, I mean, you know, and unfortunately I haven't named any of them, which is driving me nuts. I keep throwing names out there and they're not sticking. So one of these days I'll get one of these cans named, but it's not happened yet. We've released like 20 beers. So, I mean, that's terrible for me, but yeah.
Is that going to be a straight retirement for you?
I mean,
I got the name, I'm out.
I honestly think it's almost to the point now where it's like they're just not picking my names because they know it's pissing me off so much. Like, I've thrown out a couple good ones and they're just like, nah, those are terrible. I beg to differ for sure. A couple of them have been pretty good. They say Big Sexy Funk's named after me, but I think that's just them trying to throw me a bone. But I don't know.
Going from the sales rep side to owning a brewery, how does that happen? I know we were like briefly chatting about it before. Basically, you and 4 buddies teamed up to start Strathcona.
You know what? There's like 4 of us that are involved in the day-to-day, and then there's a couple other that are just kind of peripheral owners. You know what I mean? They don't really deal with us on a day-to-day basis at all. The way that it worked for me was honestly a friend of a friend, literally, as most things in life happens. And a good girlfriend of mine knew someone that was getting involved, and he really didn't have much kind of just practical knowledge on the industry. And I think it really just started as, I have a friend that's doing this. Would you be interested in having a conversation with him? And, you know, I kind of live by the motto that you would never turn down an interview. You would never turn down a coffee date, because networking is just so important in any aspect of life, whether it's dating or business or anything. So I was like, absolutely. Like, I would love to have a chat with him. So I went, and I actually went down to the brewery, and it was literally like, you know, trenches in the floor and, you know, studs, and that was it. And it was in its absolute infancy, and we met, and we hit it off, and by the end of the first meeting, it was kind of like, oh, you should come work for me. And I was like, maybe, like, probably not, dude. And then we just kind of kept meeting every couple of weeks. Like, something new would come up, and I'd just be like, yeah, like, this is how I would arrange this, or, you know, that cooler's not where I would put it, and just, you know, whatever it was, just small things like that. And then it just kept evolving to the point where it was like, you should really come over here, and yeah. And then, you know, after however long of just kind of weighing the options if it was the right move for me. Because like I said, I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in the industry. I kind of, if I'm being totally honest, there's such a level of saturation in the craft beer industry right now that I was definitely weary of jumping in on something like that. But after, meeting the people involved and the people that I was going to be partnering with, and the plan for the brand and the style of beers and just everything, I kind of got past that anxiety that I had about it, and just went for it. And honestly, I have no regrets whatsoever about it. But it was a time when I was literally like, I'm just going to stay at Big Rock, collect a paycheck, keep doing what we're doing here, and try to get out of the industry. Just, it's a very fun industry. It's a little bit sexy, but it's hard on the body. And so I kind of was just like, I can't do this forever, but getting out of the full-time kind of sales rep side of things and getting into, a bit more office time, a bit more key account stuff, it's a little bit easier on the liver. So it's been good.
Starting a brewery, I mean, in the last, let's say, 7 or 8 years, it seems like there's been 10 plus new breweries in Greater Vancouver. Is that accurate?
Oh,
every year.
Mean, I think that those numbers are low. Like
maybe 20.
In the lower mainland, without a doubt. In the Greater Vancouver area, you're probably right on 10. But I mean, in the province of BC, it's there's like 200 breweries now, you know what I mean? And I come from a time where Granville Island had the only tasting room in town, right? Yeah. So, and that was, that was why there were no other breweries, because you need that room to cover your expenses, right? So if you don't have a tasting room, how are you going to bankroll yourselves to get that big while you wait to get the draft accounts, while you wait to get on shelves, while you wait to get into the government stores? No one could do that, right? So once they opened up the tasting room licenses, that's when this whole boom happened, right? And
interesting. Okay, I didn't know that they didn't even allow the tasting rooms before.
So they might have allowed them. I could be not totally correct on that, but what they didn't allow was lounge licenses. So even at Granville Island, like back in the day, if you had been like, hey, Andrew, send me down to Granville Island for the day, I could have only given you 1 20-ounce pint. Yeah. That's all you were legally allowed, right? Yeah. So then I would have to see if there was any way to go around that, which there wasn't, I suppose. And so once they kind of changed those you don't
laws, work there anymore. You can be honest.
I know, but I work in the industry, so I'm not trying to bring too much heat on. But yeah, once they opened that up, that's when the whole revolution happened. Steamworks did it before that. Red Truck did it before that. But these are companies that were very determined, had some good backing, and were able to do it. But all of these smaller endeavors, it really opened up once that all changed. You wouldn't have seen what you see right now if they hadn't changed the liquor licensing. So, I mean, I do come from a time before that, and I think it is good what's happening right now, without a doubt. Like, I'm living proof. I'm living it. I love what's going on in this industry and the people that it's employing and the creativity that it brings about. That being said, the pie doesn't get bigger, right? Like, you're not drinking 10 times more beer because there's 10 times more selection. You might be drinking more. You're drinking more. We're all drinking more, but like, it's all relative, right? Yeah. Like, just because there is literally 1,000% increase in the options doesn't mean that you're drinking anywhere near that, right? So then the pie just gets divided up and divided up and divided up. And I think at a certain point, because Budweiser isn't going anywhere, and Heineken isn't going anywhere, and Coors and Molson aren't going anywhere. There will just be a point where it will be difficult for everyone to get a big enough piece of the pie to do what they want to do, right? And I think there's a difference between some breweries wanting to be big, right? Like, some people want to grow that big, and then there's other people that are just really happy having a tasting room and selling a bit of beer to their local, and that's great, right? So I think that's where the pivot point will have to come, of people that are going to join this industry, is really understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish in it. Because if you go into it not knowing what you're going to become, well, you could get yourself financially in trouble pretty quick, I think, because setting up a brewery is not a cheap endeavor, right? Like, there's a lot of stainless steel, coolers, keg floats, all the raw materials. And I think if you know that you want to be small, then you can really manage it right. If you know that you want to be big, then you know what you have to sell to get that big, right? So I do see just an interesting next 5 years. I think the next 5 years are going to be really interesting because there was like 20 new breweries slated for this year, you know? Where are they opening? Who are they undercutting, right? Not
Something
that it matters.
you said I really like. You said you said some variation of this. Competition breeds creativity.
Absolutely.
And I look back on the craft beer or the beer industry, and there was two players, right? It was Labatt and Molson.
Yeah.
And in the last 15 years, just how much better the product has got because of all the competition.
It's I mean, I even look at like what I used to sell, you know what I mean? And I was, you know, it was, you had Labatt and Molson, and then you had Okanagan Springs and Granville Island, and then, you know, Phillips. I mean, Phillips is spectacular what they've done, right? Like just like one of the fastest growing companies. Their volume's insane. They're across the country, like a true, beautiful, like homegrown success story, right? And then what we were serving, like at Granville and Okanagan, it was like 15, 16. Okanagan Pale Ale, like Granville Island Pale Ale, like they were great beers because they offered something that Labatt and Molson weren't even trying to offer. But when you look at even what we were selling as craft and compare it to now what is craft, I mean, you can't even compare the two things, really.
You, as an outside consumer, you look at the craft beer industry and think, oh, this must be pretty easy. There's like so many coming up all the time. But you mentioned a few things, like it's really difficult. First of all, it's super capital intensive. Equipment is fucking expensive. And I know just from seeing Steel and Oak go up 4 years ago now, maybe. But like, where does it start?
Like, as far as like, okay, so you're
like, there's a lot of shit. You're talking about branding. You're talking about names. You're talking about how do we make beer? Like,
well, I think, you know,
and then you're like, we need a location.
Location's your first thing, right? Like, I mean, you know, brewmaster. Yeah, you need a guy that's going to brew beer, right? But you could probably find your location before you find your brewmaster. Excuse me. A lot of times now these brewmasters are partners. They are the ones opening these breweries, right? So you sidestep that. But location. And I think another part of the industry that you're seeing is like your fixed costs, right? Like you understand business, like your fixed costs are going to affect how profitable you can become. You know what I mean? So if you're, you know, out in the suburbs, your fixed costs are going to be a lot less than right downtown. You know what I mean? So if all of a sudden you're paying 15, 20, 25, like $1,000 a month for your rent, well, you need to make that much more money to just pay your rent every month, as opposed to being in, you know, Langley or Abbotsford or even Brewers Row for that matter. You know what I mean? Like I have no idea what those things cost, but I mean, just you're in real estate, you would know that that's probably going to cost less per month, and that's going to cost, right? So, I mean, you have to look at that, and that's going back to, are you going to be big or are you going to be small, right? If you're going to be big, you should probably be cost conscious of that and try to find yourself something that's going to make you able to make some money right away to put back into your business, right? So I think your location's first, and then it's just full steam ahead. Pour the pad, get the tanks, build your cooler, start brewing beer.
At the beginning, so knowing how competitive of an industry it is, especially when you guys started probably like 3.5 years ago, was this? How long does it take from like idea, concept, okay, now we're finding a space, to like doors opening, beers going out of the door? You know, like the two biggest linchpins on that would be finding your location, ironing out all those things, you know, delays in building, and there's a ton of variance there. But the one thing that we ran up against, which is what it is, but it didn't help things, was liquor licensing. Right. You don't know how long that'll take, right? That could be, who knows, right? So we physically were ready, licensed to produce beer, sell beer at wholesale, and that was it on August. Oh no, I'm messing up the dates. You have to cut this out, but it was like late July. It was late July, like July 20th or something, I think, was the day that we actually got that. But then we didn't get our actual lounge license endorsement until November, something like that. Okay. So we were only basically allowed to have people in, just like at Granville Island, and have a 16 or a 20 ounce. I think it was 16. You could have a flight, so that's 4 ounces, or you could have a 16 ounce sleeve, and that was it in one sitting. So, I mean, thank God we had a pizza kitchen, or I mean, we would have been in trouble. It definitely helped out being able to make pies, because,
all you could collect from someone was a $6 pint. You know what I mean? So that was definitely a delay. And I think that they've probably sped that up, but it's still probably the one thing that can slow you down the most.
You mentioned there was a lot of differences or maybe some nervous energy in going from like big companies to a startup craft brewery. Where is information gathered? Like from concept phase being like, okay, there's 5 dudes. We want to start a brewery. We need a space. But like, is it just going to a shit ton of breweries and being like, okay, I like what they're doing with this beer. I don't like what they're doing with this beer. Or is it just like leave everything in the brewmaster's hands and let's focus on the brand? I think that really is, there probably is a right answer. I can tell you what we did. Yeah. I don't know if there is a right answer. There probably is. But for us, we launched with what we launched with. And that was kind of the brewmaster's decision. And I can tell you that there's only one beer that we still make that we launched, and that's the Pilsner. Interesting.
There's not one beer. I think it's all growing pains, right? And that was kind of what like made me nervous about going into it to start, was just how well is this going to go? Like, I had faith in it. I had faith in the partners. I had faith in the brand. I had faith in everything, but there's still unknowns. You know what I mean? You changed industries as well. I'm sure you had some nerves about it. I think for us,
I was clueless though. When I started, I guess I classify like how I got into it was just like, I had this ridiculously naive confidence. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do really well at this.
I probably had the same. I knew stuff, but I'd never opened a brewery before. So, I mean, I think I probably had a naive confidence to just, figure it out as you go, but I would say that if you were to ask everyone involved, there's definitely things we would do differently. And one of them would, in my opinion, would be committing to beers long-term, like a great brewery that I think did it, probably the right way because they wanted to be big, right? And maybe we wanted to be big, but we're going about it the wrong way at the very beginning. If you look at Steamworks, when they opened, Pilsner and Pale Ale, that was it. All day, every day, Pilsner and Pale Ale, 6-pack bottles. That's all they offered for like a year. Got them listed in the government, built up brand equity in those 2 beers. And now those 2 beers are monsters for them, national brands, right? And then you look at Parkside. Brewer there worked with me at Granville, and their sales director worked at Red Truck. Red Truck, lager, pale ale all day. Then they went into an IPA. So when Parkside opened, Pilsner, pale ale. I think that's something that, knowing that we did want to be big, we kind of just threw a bunch of stuff out there and waited to see what stuck. And it turned out that the Pilsner stuck, and then the beers that we kind of came with later stuck. You need to be on trend, right? Like, you can do whatever you want, and the brewers can do whatever they want. But at the end of the day, there has to be a market for them, right? Like, the barrel stuff, just because, you want to make a barrel beer doesn't mean that the large population is going to buy it. You know what I mean? And that is a bit of a tug of war with us because, our brewers are so creative and they want to do so many things, and you have to give them the freedom to be creative and do what they want. But you also have to rein them in and be like, but that's not going to sell, or that's just not worth the effort. You know what I mean? It is a bit of a tug of war. Like, I don't think that they get out of bed and love brewing beach in the summertime. But at the end of the day, I mean, we sold 75 skids of it last year in 4 months. You know what I mean? Like, those are pretty big numbers, and we'll probably do even more this year, I would think. So I don't think that they love doing that. So you got to do this for me all summer, and then, you can do whatever you want in the barrels next year. It's kind of how it has to be,
With any business, you have to do what customers
right?
want, right?
You're in an industry that's it's a creative industry, right? So there is it's more of a tug. And I dealt with this at Big Rock as well, where they were adamant about not forcing the brewers to make what the sales and the marketing wanted. And that was great, but I don't necessarily think that steers you in the right direction, because those brewers might make an unbelievable beer, right? An unbelievable beer. but you can't actually take it to market. You know what I mean? Like you might make something that's so insane in fooders or barrels or in a cool ship, and it's just unbelievable. But you can't, like, it's economy of scale. Like you can't scale it up and actually sell it. So what are you doing it for? Like,
it goes back to what you said earlier,
right?
and like, because there's so much competition in BC, you have to decide whether you want to be like the unique city brand or you want to grow.
Totally.
And if you want to grow, you have to all be on board, including the brewers, that like, this is what we need to do to grow. Totally. Yes, there's always going to be room for feature one-off beers or seasonal beers or whatever that come 2 months every year or whatever. But you need to be able to produce enough of the flagships that go a long way.
Well, I mean, like our beach, like if all of a sudden, like we couldn't get the ingredients for it, like, you know, why are we even going to brew it at all? You can't grow it. You can't keep going with it. It's just going to go downhill because you can't get the materials anymore. Like it's just like any beer or any product that you're going to produce. If you can't keep scaling it up, then you're just wasting your time and your money even trying, right? So I think the brewers are great. Honestly, I would say that it's honest to God a pleasure working with our two main brewers. And they've come so far as well, you know, like it's like a cook in a kitchen, you know, like, or on your new barbecue, like how hot does this thing get? You know what I mean? And you're burning your burgers the first couple times. Like I would honestly say that like the beers have just gotten so much better, and it's because of their, you know, their dedication, and they're always tweaking it, and they're always, you know, working on just every aspect of it. And it doesn't go unnoticed, and it, you know, the consumer themselves are definitely, you know, the sales and just the, you know, the reception we get at trade shows. I mean, the proof is definitely in the pudding that the product's getting better, and the brand keeps getting better, you know?
Okay, we're talking a lot about beer. I feel like we should open a beer.
We probably should.
Okay, next up is all that and then some. Can you tell me what Mosaic is? Is the pale ale with Mosaic?
Yeah, it's obviously a hop. It's more of a fruity hop. It's a really, again, on trend. You know, it's a really thank you. It's a really on trend hop. So we use it in a couple of our products. Yeah, it does.
Deadly.
It started off this beer actually as it was just going to be a spring pale ale. And it just did really, really well for us. So we've kept it all year, and quite proud of it.
I like these beers a lot.
The hazy, like, you know, talking about trend, like just every beer with haze seems to be
almost
trend.
like a touch hazy though. It's not
it's like cloudy.
Yeah.
You know.
Like. It's not overpoweringly citrus like a lot of the hazy ones are. No. Almost taste juicy.
It's definitely got a nice hop back to it for sure, but not bitter. You just kind of get a little bit of it on your tongue, on the front of the tongue.
I like that. To me, that is crushable.
You could crush that. I have crushed that.
Okay, I have one more question on like early days before doors open. How much focus is put on branding and being unique in the marketplace versus like selling yourselves as the quality of the beer?
It's a great question. So I would say, and honestly, I remember someone saying this to me, and I actually took offense to it, and I would apologize to them now. But they literally said that the brand, the brand propped us up at the beginning as the beers got better. I think you can look at some breweries that have done it the way of just, you know, doing just banger beers right off the bat. And, you know, there's a million reasons that probably happens. I think that our brand honestly did keep us afloat at the very beginning. We did not keep us afloat, but just really like endear us to the consumer that was going to be coming back as we got better and better. And like we launched with a 40 ounce. We're the only craft brewery in Canada that had a 40 ounce bottle. So we did a 40 ounce bottle of gold, and it was a Belgian golden ale. And you know, just something as simple as that, like just being different, you know, not putting malt liquor into a 40 and actually putting like a really nice Belgian style ale into a 40 ouncer, just really, really set us apart. The labels that we put on our bombers, because when we first launched, we only had bombers, right? So when I was going out there to sell, all I had was bombers and draft, right? And funny story, when we launched, and I actually it was my first days of selling beer. Like I said, I hadn't fully been on board yet. I was obviously helping with things, but not all the decision making. And the guys had brewed a full batch of every beer that they were going to brew, and they put it all into kegs. So I had 300 fucking kegs that I was like, so what? We don't have a fucking single account. Our liquor license isn't even a lounge yet. We can only sell this 16 ounces at a time to different people or flights. What are we doing with all this beer, guys? So that was definitely a learning experience for us. But yeah, I can just going back to it. I think the brand, you could do it both ways. It would be ideal if you had your brand dialed and your beer dialed. I just think that, it's going to take you a bit of time to figure out what's going to work for you.
It's interesting that you say that was, or you took offense to that comment.
It bugged me because I was like, what are you saying? You saying our beer shit, dude? I was fucking pissed. Honestly, I was. But I get what he was saying.
I almost see it the other way that to me, a brand sells beer, right? Totally. I go in there right now. I'm into hazies like every other fucking person in the world. So I go into a liquor store and I find hazies, and I'll be like, I've never tried this one. I never tried this one. This one has a cooler label, right?
You're totally right about that, because the consumer nowadays, it's easy for me when I go in to buy beer because I buy the breweries that I know and that I like and the products, and I'm around it so much. But for, my mom or my dad going into the store, pray for them. That's tough. You know what I mean? Honestly, even a small
just
liquor store,
right?
A small liquor store,
there's 400 different beers in there.
And single cans and imports, it's insane. It's awesome. I love it, but yeah, I mean, it's got to be really intimidating. But you're right about that, and that is probably more what he was saying, is that your brand was so eye catching that people were looking for it and seeking it out and picking it over other established products, and that was true. We did. We had a good launch. We had a good first year. We haven't really had to look back and question what we've done. It's been an evolution, is the best way to say. It's constant. We're always looking at, is our packaging right? Is the label right? When we first did Beach, we put a foil lid on it like San Pellegrino. I would get there at 5 a.m. with two of the other partners, and we would have these plungers and literally put a single foil thing on it, plunge it down. It was, we were doing anything for the brand, but it did set us apart. But then on a windy day, those things would fly off, so we stopped. But no, the brand for us was huge, and I think it just paved the way for us to kind of be where we are today.
Starting out, beer's ready to rock, doors open. I know you're a sales guy.
Ready to go.
Where do you start? You're literally brand new. The industry is super competitive.
You know what? You go out and you see the people that have been good to you in the past. You know what I mean? And luckily,
back to networking, right?
Back to networking, and you go out and these people, they help you out, and It is tough though, right? Because it doesn't do me any good to put my product on the shelf if it's not going to sell either. You know what I mean? I don't want to buy it back. I don't want something sitting there with dusty on the shelf. So you have to work together, right? So I never went in expecting them to help me. I went in asking them to help me. I didn't expect hey, I was your rep for 5 years with this company and 2.5 years with this company, and let's get it on the shelf. I showed them what I had, and I just trusted that I had been good enough to them over the years that they wanted to help me, and luckily they did, because not in every store did it sell, and every store didn't have the right product mix when I first sold to them. And, what we put on, it's funny, our ISA was our number one draft product when we launched. You know what I mean? We don't even carry that beer anymore. We killed it after 6 months, and then our British IPA won a gold the first year we opened at the Canadian Brewing Awards. So, then all of a sudden we started selling a ton of that, but you go out to the people that were good to you, and then luckily we had a good brand, and a lot of people reached out to us and wanted to try our stuff, so we got a lot of taps off the beginning, and liquor stores were kind of eager, and going in with bombers was less of an ask, right? I'm not asking for shelf space, 6-packs, just, buy a case, throw it in the corner, see if it sells. And it did. So
this just popped in my head, but not that I obviously want to shit on anyone's product, but how much I'll just ask the question straight up then. Like how would you value the importance of a relationship in terms of getting product out there versus the actual quality of the product? And I know it probably depends on the salesperson, but like
dude, totally,
because it's so competitive. Like if my name's John and I own a liquor store and I really like you, if your product's not that good, but I really like you, Carl's product is a little bit better, but I don't like Carl. I'm probably stocking your product.
I can tell you that I'm not going to say which company was which, but you know which companies I worked for, and one of them was fucking easy to sell, and one of them was not. Okay. And yeah, that was trying on some of my relationships. You know what I mean? Because I thought that they would support me, and they didn't. And that was hard, to be honest with you. I literally remember going into one store and she would crush it for me with one of the companies that I worked with. And I walked in and she came out, gave me a hug, and I was like, "What are you doing? I haven't seen you forever." And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing this now." And she, I'm not fucking kidding, turned around and walked back into the back of the liquor store. That was the end of the meeting, man. I haven't seen her since, literally. Like, and that was the most extreme example, without a doubt. But she just, it could, and that could have nothing to do with the product. That could have to do with the previous rep. That could have to do with, the accounting department not giving her credit back, right?
Not getting the right order one time or whatever.
Things, right? But if you're good at your job, and you're true to your word, and you never overpromise and underdeliver and all these fucking sales cliches, but they're true. And if you really do that, and you're just good at your job, and you work pretty darn hard, people will support you. They honestly will. If your product is unsellable, dude, they're going to be good to you though. Like they'll be honest with you, and they'll just say, they'll try every fucking product you have before they say, "I can't sell this. Like, I just can't." You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what most people did. We just tried everything. And when it wouldn't move, thank you for trying. You know what I mean? And same here. If something doesn't work here, like obviously the brand, like it comes off the shelf. It's it's award-winning product. It's on trend. It's local. It ticks most boxes for consumers. But yeah, some places it doesn't sell as well as other places. And that's, in all my years, been something I can't wrap my head around. Because you'll have one store that just flies through one product, and then 2 kilometers away, pretty much the same neighborhood, that product won't even move. So I don't know if it's one guy with a drinking problem living next to that store or what, but yeah, it's crazy to me. It's always been an anomaly.
It sounds like the relationship can get the foot in the door, but the product enhances the relationship.
It's still a business, right? Yeah. Like at the end of the day, like either they own the store and it's their bottom line that they care about, or they have a boss that they have to answer to. Yeah. And no matter how much they like you, everyone's results driven, right? Like you can't really, it doesn't matter what you do, you're still results driven, right? Like it's nice to have a friend who's the rep that comes in once a week and you guys shoot the shit, and you always buy your breakage, and you're always willing to do a tasting and a giveaway and everything, right? But at the end of the day, like you can only do that for so long. If they look at their numbers and they've sold one in a month, they can't do that for very long.
You talk about being confused when a product does really well at one store but not at another store. Yeah. Is there any research that goes into like demographics of neighborhoods and when you're approaching stores this is a Pilsner driven whatever? Yeah,
no. I think without, oversimplifying it, I mean, like, even when I was at like Granville Island, like we sold so well downtown because downtown had like adopted craft, you know what I mean? And then it wasn't quite out all the way in the valley. You know what I mean? Like the numbers out there, like for Granville Island, like even in Surrey, you know what I mean? Like they weren't quite there. And then craft really hit there. And at the end of my time at Granville Island, myself and the rep in Surrey and Langley had the largest volumes out of anyone in the country, probably, definitely in the province, right? And it's just, it does take time to travel, right? But now you see people of our, similar age and demographic, like that's where we're moving, right? Like, so, there's not really a real barrier anymore, or there shouldn't be. But I mean, dude, trust me, like the big companies, they've they've dissected everything. Like, I don't have those decks, but I could tell you that Labatt could tell you for sure. They could tell you that.
Obviously, one side of branding is social media. How much time and effort do you guys put into marketing on social media, or just growing your brand?
I put none, but we put a lot. As I said, I'm not really allowed. I like to speak about the brand, but I'm not allowed to really touch it. But the guys do a really, really good job on our social media. It's a commitment.
That might be a name right there, potential name. Don't Touch Me IPA or something like that.
Like it. They'll shoot it down, but we'll try it. We'll try it.
No, but it has to come from you. Yeah, no, it has to come from you because you're not allowed to touch the brand, so it's ironic.
Don't touch this. Yeah. They'll say, no, let's do can't touch this, just so that it's not fully mine. It's a commitment. One of my partners, Age, he's in charge of... He's in charge of doing like the story-based stuff and a lot of the stuff when we're out and about. And then one of the other partners, he's in charge of all the posts and releases and all that kind of stuff. So it's a 2-man job, and they split it, and they do an unreal job. They're really, really good at it. I mean, it's huge, right? Like, I mean, like people say print is dead, right? Like, I mean, when was print ever like alive for beer? You know what I mean? Like, it's always been a guerrilla style marketing industry. You know what I mean? And Instagram and Facebook and all those other platforms have just made it way more accessible for people. You know, like everyone's got their phone. So, I mean, all the other people that I know that have companies, like I go on my phone at the end of the day, and it's like every fucking brewery has a story and a post. Because it's all about content, you know, like it is. You just want to flood people with content, and I mean, we're like, how else are you going to be front of mind for free? You know what I mean? Like when I worked at Granville, it was like our marketing were like buses. Like we would do the banners on the side of buses and bus stops and radio hits, right? Well, small breweries don't have money to be throwing it at radio ads and getting on the side of buses, right?
So when you useless.
Sorry?
No one's paying attention there.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember sitting in on meetings, and they're like, they're going to get 250,000 hits on eyes every month on like a bus stop. And I'm like, yeah, just because they see it doesn't mean that they fucking registered it.
They're not seeing it.
No, they're not. They're driving by it, and they just like, whatever. It's in one ear, out the other. You're literally, when people are on their phones, it's insane. And I hate it myself how much I'm on my phone, but I'm consuming. Like, I am literally consuming. Like, I could tell you what I saw today. I couldn't tell you one fucking thing that was on a bus today. I literally couldn't. And I drove all day.
Okay, I talk about this all the time, is that even when you're in your car, you're on your phone. Stop at a red light, look around you. There's 4 cars around
Not
you.
me.
3 of them are on their phone, but 3 of them are. No one's looking at bus stops. Like they're on their phone.
People are looking at the bus stops to see if a cop is standing next to the bus stop. That is the only thing they're doing. No, I mean, that's all changed, right? And honestly, that's why you see, you know, Snapchat, like Instagram, Facebook, you know, like, you know, we're getting emails from like Bumble to do like mixers at our bar and stuff, you know, like it's just social media is just, it's on a different level, but it's such a good tool for a business of our size, right? Like I question how we would get out there as much if it didn't exist, you know, like honestly, how would you do it, right? Like there's some really great publications that are craft beer driven. They're awesome. The Growler, Beer Me BC, whatever. I'm forgetting a bunch. I'm sorry. But, you know, there's a lot of them. But, you know, that's not as daily, and it's just not as full on as social media. Nothing is.
What would you say the typical demographic of a Strathcona beer drinker or a craft beer BC drinker is?
Oh, honestly, I would say that we have a pretty wide one, but I mean, I think that we're a pretty standard demographic for most other craft brewers. I mean, I think that we're definitely, you know, we kind of spoke about this before we went on, but you know, yeah, skateboarding's part of it, music, hip hop, you know, we're definitely a little bit more of a street brand for sure. So I think that we definitely lean more that way. But you know, you come into our tap room and because we're in such a cool neighborhood, it's such a mashup of people, you know, and the people that I see walking out of the store with our beer, honestly, I couldn't really I couldn't narrow it down. I mean, I would say that it's people like us because we are the people that drink the most craft beer, but you know, it would surprise you, I think. Yeah.
How much of the idea behind the brand goes into the neighborhood that you're in, or comes from the neighborhood that you're in?
You know, the neighborhood, it wasn't my inspiration, but it was the principal partner's inspiration. And it was massive. Like, it was a really, really big part of why we're there. You know, he bought his first house there. He wanted to go back there. And I think when it came down to it, for him to be involved, it was kind of like Strathcona or bust, you know. I think the other great thing about Strathcona, you know, it's the oldest residential neighborhood in Vancouver. There is a Strathcona all across Canada, which is nice if we do want to grow. We can be local in almost every province. You know, there's Strathcona in Victoria. There's one in Edmonton, and as far as I know, they continue east. So that's also another nice little thing that if we ever, you know, have that much success, that we could go that way. But you know, it's homage to a cool neighborhood. It's homage to, you know, Lord Strathcona. It was his way of kind of giving back and getting into an industry that he really kind of wanted to enter. Right. So, and, you know, the neon, there's a lot of neon in our building as well, in our tasting room and you know, our big sign on the roof and all that. And that pays homage to all the neon that used to go up and down Hastings. I think, you know, I'm not going to lie to you, but at some point it was the neon capital of somewhere. Maybe Vancouver, maybe BC, maybe Canada. It wasn't North America because Vegas existed, but at a point in time, it was known for its neon signs, right? So a lot of homage paid to the neighborhood and the history there, to be honest.
So is that where the like tie-dye coloring comes from?
Tie-dye coloring?
Well, like the bright cans and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Honestly, I think a lot of this stuff comes from music. A lot of it comes from music. We, you know, Get Down on It. You know, Big Sexy Funk was the name of a club night downtown back in the day that some of the partners used to be involved with. It was called Big Sexy Funk. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from music. We did last year. I'll tell you this little story real quick. We did a beer for our winter radler. So this year it's crispy. And last year it was called Burr. But before it was called Burr, it was to be called She's So Cold. Okay. which is nothing other than a Rolling Stones lyric. That being said, like the whole song, I could see perhaps how some people thought it was maybe not sensitive. This was also, keep in mind, within like 2 weeks of Me Too starting, Harvey Weinstein being charged. Like it was a very touchy time. And we released our first post of She's So Cold, and people loved it. But a couple of people did not like it at all. And they made a bit of a stink, which was fine. And we agreed, okay, like we're a little brewery in Vancouver. We're not trying to be political. Okay. Like it's a lyric. Winter is cold. Mother Nature is a woman. That was all that there was behind that name. But we made the decision to rip all the labels off. So I was there at like 5 a.m. peeling labels off of every single can because, you know, being politically correct, you know, I mean, some people would say no press is bad press, but I mean, that was a pretty touchy time. So we rebranded it and cut our losses. And, you know, you have to be, I don't remember where we started on this, why I went down this road about brand. Oh, tie-dye, just about like where this stuff comes from. It comes from music. A lot of it honestly comes from music. And, you know, I guess now we'll listen to the whole song, not just one lyric in the future, so that we can get a temperature for what the song's all about. But yeah, I mean, that one was unfortunate, but everything else has been on the up and up.
One of my questions is like maybe, I don't know, a little bit more of an edgy brand in terms of craft beer in BC.
I would say so. Yeah.
But like how much thought goes into something like political correctness?
I mean, it always has to be front of mind that the climate that we live in today is just like night and day. Like, I mean, I've watched episodes of Friends, and Friends was a feel good show, but some of the things that they say on there today, they would not say. You know, and that's crazy. That's like mainstream 8:00 on a Thursday night cable television. Like the world is watching and they are saying slanderous things that today you cannot get away with. Right. Yeah. And I think that no matter what business you work in, you know, like there's always a line to walk, but like you really have to be cautious. But I would say that, yeah, we're a bit edgier for sure. I mean, with, you know, the names and some of the branding and, you know, I don't know how it's edgy, but I would definitely say that yeah, we're a little more street brand, right? And I just think that comes with, you know, we got like graffiti on the building and stuff like that.
You're not afraid to stand out and have a personality. Maybe
like
it's not edgy.
No, I like
that.
But
it's like you're not trying to be plain.
No,
with these labels, right?
Not at all.
You're not trying to fit in on a shelf.
That's the point. Do
you mind if I open this next one?
Please do.
Big Sexy Funk.
Go on.
IPA. A lighter IPA, 5.5%.
Yeah, this one does really, really well for us. This is probably
dry hazy.
Yeah, probably
sounds right up my alley.
You're gonna like it. This is a good one. Yeah, this one probably does the best for us in the tall can format.
Ooh. Speaking of hazy IPAs, when did these become like super popular?
You know what?
Because for me, it's probably only been 6 months that I've been really into them.
You know what?
But I'm sure it was before that.
Because I was in the industry when IPAs became a thing. You know what I mean? And everything was like IPA, you know, and Fat Tongue was king,
hoppy
right?
Can we get this thing?
Right? Let's just blow people's taste buds apart, right? And, you know, Fat Tongue, I still love a good Fat Tongue. Like, you know, that beer's not going anywhere. It's just a spectacular beer. But obviously, you know, as one thing, you know, becomes, you know, trendy, people look at what's the next thing, right? And this was the next thing, just a different yeast strain, different malt bills, right? You're using a little bit more pale malt to get yourself, you know, maybe even some wheat or some oat, and just a totally different style of yeast that people were using before in these kind of beers, right? Like people were just using ale yeasts, right? Now they're using totally different styles of yeast in these beers, and that's really where most of the difference comes from.
You talk about on trend, and I know it's like from my perspective of the craft beer industry, like 4 or 5 years ago is like hoppy beers. How do we get something with more hops, double, triples,
totally,
quadruple hops?
Yeah.
It's like 140 IBUs.
Oh,
I don't even know if that's a real number, but it seemed like they're so high.
After 100, your tongue can't even tell you what it is. I'm pretty sure like that's actually true. Yeah.
And then from my perspective, again, like 2 years ago, it was like sours were really big. Yeah. And I wasn't really into them. But then like hazies in the last maybe year, I don't know.
Yeah, no, you know, I think hazy probably came in when sours did. They kind of came hand in hand, I would say. Sours are definitely still here. Hazies are definitely still here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the attraction was, other than the fact that I think they're just more sessionable. You know what I mean? Like I remember going to the bar and having like 4 fat tugs and being like, I don't even know where I am. Like just being so drunk. You know what I mean? And not to say that I don't get somewhat like that off of 4 of these too, but like it's just not quite the same. Yeah. They are definitely more sessionable. It's not just about just a hop kick to the teeth. It's it's really the aromatics behind them. Just the fruity flavors. It's just a totally different experience, but it still gives you that what's the word? Astringency on your tongue a little bit. You know what I mean? Just when you're drinking it, like, I don't know. I used to smoke, so I would say it's probably like a similar kind of thing when you get that tingle in your throat when you're smoking. I think for an IPA drinker or a beer drinker, you get that coating on your tongue. It's probably the same kind of mental hit. Little science there, maybe.
I don't know. It's above my pay grade.
Me too.
I don't know what science.
Science or math.
How much of like what you guys try to do, I'm sure you do seasonal beers and stuff like that, but how much of what you try to do is because a certain type of beer is on trend versus like, this is our brand and this is where we want to go?
I think honestly, I would say it's pretty well split. No matter what we decide is on trend or we want to try, or we're going to go back to the well on it or whatever it is, the brand is always decided kind of separately of it. You know, like if you look at these cans, like there's no real correlation to what's inside of it. You know what I mean? Like Big Sexy Funk, like that's a bigger beer. If anything, you know, like there's no real correlation. Like we go in whatever direction we're going on the branding because that's what we want to do. And we think that's dope looking. You know what I mean? The trend and what we're doing, we do that because that's what's going to sell, or that's something that we're really interested in trying to execute. You know what I mean? We have a series of beers called Love Buzz right now. And that's, well, we've had it for a while. And that's just sours, Berliner Weisses primarily. And we just flip the fruits, you know, we just try something different, you know, tweak the recipe obviously. And then just, you know, what kind of fruit do we want to do? Are we going to do a seasonal fruit, or are we just going to be like, let's do fucking that this time. Let's just try it. You know what I mean? So I would say that those two things are somewhat independent of themselves. But with the Love Buzz, it truly does. We do kind of stick to the color, the colors on the can being somewhat like correlated to the fruits, but other than that, everything else is just kind of whatever looks cool.
Is there a clash then in terms of like standing out as a brand if it's like an industry trend and everyone's trying to make the best hazy right now, or everyone's trying to make the best IPA? Is there a little bit of a clash in terms of like finding your own personality and your individuality as a brand versus like, I just want to win in that one category because that's popular this year?
You know, I think that we try to just do our own thing. I really do. I think that I think that everyone does for the most part. I honestly don't think, like, when you think about how many beers are done and how many cans are produced, right? Like, I don't feel like there's that much like ripping off or that much biting happening, you know, like, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, bright cans, everyone's kind of doing bright cans, you know what I mean? Because as the shelf space gets more and more competitive, you do need to jump into people's hands a little bit more. Right. But I do think that everyone just kind of like does what they do. I don't feel like at least in our sense, like, we were never opening to be a Radler company. You know what I mean? But like, we're a fucking Radler company. Like, we sell a fucking lot of Radler. You know what I mean? But these other beers crush it too now because of that, right? But like, we just did what we wanted to do. Like, honestly, the best way I could say it is like, the guys involved, like, we like to drink beer and we like to like drink quite a few beers. And like, honestly, I'm not going for like the 12% like triple, you know what I mean? Like, I'll make it because I know that the boys can make it and the branding will look sick and the brewers will crush the recipe and it'll be a great beer. But like, I'm not trying to win in that category. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, if that's something that like wins for us, that's great. But like, Beach wasn't really about winning. Like, we didn't do Beach because it was like, we gotta have the best fucking Radler in the country. Gotta have it. Like, who would do that? You know what I mean? It just so happened that we banged it out of the park and now we sell a lot of it. But like, it wasn't about like winning in that category. Like, that IPA, like, it wasn't about winning the best, you know, American style IPA. It was just like, let's make an American style IPA because like, that is something we haven't done yet. And it is a trendy style of beer. People are drinking it, so we can make some money on it, right? Because at the end of the day, like, this isn't all about making money, but like, you got to make money, and you know, you chase where you see you can have success. I think is the best way to put it. Wherever you see an opportunity to like help your business, then you go after that. And sometimes it goes like Beach, and sometimes you do one batch of it, and that beer will never come back. You know, and that's part of being in a creative industry like this, right? Some things work and some things don't. You can't force something, right? Like, you can't just hang on to something because you want it to work. Tried it, didn't work, move on.
You've been in the industry 2.5 years, or the brewery's been open for 2.5 years. Would Beach be like the biggest success story that wasn't that you didn't really expect? Yeah,
probably. I mean, that one was that one right there, winning gold in Canada was maybe a bit unexpected. It was a spectacular beer and we all knew it was, but the American IPA category is probably the most competitive category at the Canadian Brewing Awards because hazy American IPAs are on trend right now, right? So winning that one was probably a surprise, but Beach was definitely something that, it blew up probably more than we expected for sure.
Any big like failure beers that you thought were gonna crush it?
You know, we did one, and I wouldn't say that we've ever. I'm not going to say this. I know I probably sound like a homer saying this, like we've never put out a bad beer. Like we've definitely not. We've definitely put out. Oh yeah, no, we did one that I didn't like. It was a peppercorn, a Szechuan peppercorn something.
That sounds like a Storm beer.
Dude, it smelled like Chinese food. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, the brewer would bring it to me and I'd be like, dude, that smells like takeout. Like, it actually aged better. It aged much better than I thought it would. But that one, dude, we didn't even package that one. That one just like threw it in some kegs and dumped it at the end of the day. Like, but I think, what was the one I was going to say a minute ago? The ones that haven't hit, and there's a couple that like they bug me because I just think that we just and it's on me, you know, not executing the timeline of when this beer should have been released. We did a Hefeweizen last year, and it was called Canned Heat, and the can was sick, but I just think it didn't. It sounded like a spicy. Like I just think it was confusing. I think that the can design and the can name were maybe a little confusing to the consumer, and then we released it too late in the summer.
Like it sounds like it'd be a spicy beer.
Totally. Canned heat, right?
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. It was supposed to more be like, this is canned summer. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like this is a Hefeweizen, right? And I love Hefs. Like back in the day with Granville Island, like I thought that beer was just spectacular. It really was. It was honestly
by far the best in its category without a doubt. In the day.
No, without a doubt, it was. And it still is. It's still a spectacular beer. I don't know if it's number one. I haven't really drank Hefs in a while. Too busy with the hazy IPAs. But we did this beer, and it was I think it was a mango Hefeweizen. Yeah, I think it was mango. I thought it was fucking unbelievable. Like honestly, and I like came from Granville Island where we had an unbelievable hef, and I was like, this beer is going to be a monster for us. Like this is going to be our next like summer hit. And I don't know, I haven't even talked to the guys yet, but like I want to redo it, but they're just going to be like, dude, like let it go. I know they are, but I thought that I missed on when it should have been released. It should have been earlier in the summer for sure. But we'll see. That was one that was a bit of a disaster, but mainly to my own fault.
How much time do you spend analyzing something like that, or do you just say, this was a dud, let's move on? Or is it like, we fucked up the name here, it should have been more summary or whatever? I would probably say it's more like self-reflection on that. We don't really get into it. Like, the thing is we produce a beer, and if we're just doing one batch, that shit's gone like that. Like it's just out to the liquor stores, it's gone. And the real truth is how quick it's off their shelves, right? Like everyone eats up all of our stock. If we do a full batch and we do 4 skids of it, like it's gone, right? But then you'll see it sticks around on shelves. Fuck, what am I doing here? And that's where you start to realize like, yeah, that beer was mistimed, because people will still buy it because, we have fun cans and good branding, and, we drop a new release every month, and they kind of expect it. It just, rolls into the shelves and rolls out. And so that usually isn't a problem, but it's more like individual reflection that I do on things like that, where it's like, yeah, that wasn't executed right or whatever. But I don't know. We'll see if I go to bat for that one. I'll probably just let it go, do a half a couple years from now when they need to be revived or something. Can I be the impartial taste tester and deciding factor of that beer? Yeah, please do. Because it sounds fucking delicious. It was. I'm not kidding. Mango hef is right up my alley. It was mango. I'm pretty sure. It might have been mango something. It might have been mango something else hef. It was. I swear, man. I thought that beer was going to be a banger. I really did. Who do I need to talk to get in the tasting? Find you some, but I'm not going to get a taste now. This is last summer. Yeah. Well, we better start getting ready to brew this thing if we're doing it this summer. I know it needs to be released earlier this year too. Christ, I'm already behind probably. A couple of awards last year. Mm-hmm. The Pilsner. Yeah. and this guy.
Yeah.
Get down on it. I guess, do you go into awards ceremonies like expecting, or with any, do you care at all? Like, I mean, are awards
it's so
important
objective.
at all?
It's so objective, right? Like, dude, you go to some of these, and they're so heavily focused on European styles. You know what I mean? And you as a business, like, that's not what I make. I make 2 hazy IPAs. I can only enter 1. I make a hazy pale ale. There might not even be a category for that. It might just be pale ale. So then I'm different than the other things that are entered in it. Pilsner, literally every company can enter into that. And then a beach, like, what category does the beach go in? Like, they don't have a Rattler category, you know what I mean? So then I'm in fruit beers while I'm up against like barrel aged fruit beers, right? So I think it's objective. Honestly, I think I give such kudos to anyone that wins awards, because they're doing a great job and people are recognizing that. And it's not an easy industry to make great products and that stand out. So honestly, I'm not downplaying them whatsoever. We've won, whatever, in our 2.5 years, we've won 5-6 awards, something like that, between all different shows. But that's not what like makes us do what we do, like perfect example. We won gold in Canada for our British IPA the first year we were open. We went balls to the wall with that beer, and now we don't even make it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of these people that win awards, they did this beer once. They did it once in a bomber. They sent that bomber and they won. They don't even make the fucking beer anymore. So like that's great. Bring it back, and that's great. It's won an award, and it's clearly a great beer. But like, for your core business, like, you don't even make the beer anymore. What did it do for you? You know what I mean? Like, it's never a bad thing. I'm not saying ever winning an award is a bad thing, but I don't think that it makes or breaks you whatsoever. Like, I think it's very objective.
So it's more like an acknowledgement thing within the industry.
Yeah, I think I think if you haven't,
it's not going to boost your
award,
sales. Like Daggerad winning Canadian Brewery of the Year.
I'm sure it helped them. I can't imagine that that they've flatlined since then. You know what I mean? But I don't think like all of a sudden they're looking
like
for a new building. No, it's not an Oscar.
It's not like your rate goes up.
Look at Leo. Look how long it took Leo to get one. I mean, that didn't change anything. I still went all his movies, whatever. No, it's great. And honestly, I was happy for Daggerad and happy to see Steel and Oak win awards. And I'm happy to see everyone win awards. Honestly, I love, part of what I love about this industry is the collaborative, respect that everyone has, like, I love that about this industry. So I'm not here saying anything other than good for everyone that wins awards. We've won them too, but I just don't think like that's not what you hang your hat on, in my opinion. Like, it's always about the next one, really.
In BC, Greater Vancouver, who do you look at and be like, they're doing a good job, other than Strathcona? Because I know you're biased. I want to talk about a few categories though. You're not going to get in trouble for this. Not that many people listen to it yet.
Yeah. And they'll go back in the archives.
Okay, so the first category is branding.
Yeah.
So who do you look at and be like, their brand sticks out, they're doing a good job?
The silence doesn't mean that there's no one. It just means that I want to make sure that I give you a good answer on this. I mean, okay, like Superflux, they work out of our brewery, and I think that they have some really great branding.
I would agree.
I think it's really great.
Mm-hmm.
Four Winds with their boxes, 33 acres with their simplistic, look. There's so many, dude. There's so many companies that are doing well. I would put us up there in the top 10. I would put a lot of these companies up there in the top 10, to be honest with you, 10 of them to be exact in the top 10. But no, like there's some, and they're all newer companies. Like, I think that even, did I say Four Winds? Four Winds is so simple. You know what I mean? It's more of like a Regal brand with their 4-pack bottles, but like, it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, they've taken themselves out of the mainstream 6-pack market and done 4-pack 330 mils. Like, no one's ever done that. You know what I mean? And I think it's crazy, but clearly they're crushing it. You know what I mean? I think Steel and Oak does a good job on their branding. I do. I
You don't have to say that.
No, I do though. I actually, no, I know the guys down there and I really like them. Honestly, like, I'm not just saying that. I think that they are very clean with what they do and the continuity. I think a lot of companies miss on continuity. It's something that I was weary about with us, was that it was like, people have to fucking know who that is, right? It's great to put all the stuff all over the can, but your logo better be in the same place on every can and the name better be in the same place on every can, so that when someone walks in, it doesn't matter how insane that can looks. They see that S there, they know that's us, right? Like Steel and Oak's very good about that. And that's something that I feel like a lot of companies miss. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses and they see colorful packaging and they're just like, colorful, right? And it's like, yeah, colorful, but who the fuck is that? Like, I don't even know what company that is, you know? Like they got their logo here on this one and the name down there and then the logo down there, and like it's important, right? So I think they do a good job, and I think a lot of the companies that I would throw in the higher echelon of that are very good about their brand continuity, right? Because once you build equity in that brand, you know, I'm always weary about changing our branding and stuff because you've built up some trust by the consumer. They know that package, they look for it. You change it, or one looks different than the other. Well, what are you doing? Because they're not looking for that anymore, because they're looking for something totally different on the shelf.
It's an interesting point. I went to Whistler, it was probably in the fall now, and I stopped on the way and grabbed like, I don't know, 4 or 5 tall cans. Mm-hmm. One of them I grabbed solely because it had a cool label.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
But I got there and started drinking this thing, and someone was like, "Oh, that's a cool label. What brewery is that?" I had no idea.
Couldn't figure it out, I bet, even.
And I was a few beers deep, so maybe it took me a little longer than it should have. But it took me like 3 minutes to find the brewery, and it was literally in the fine print right here. So all it said was like Strathcona Beer Company.
I mean,
not that it wasn't Strathcona, but I'm just pointing at this can.
If that's what you do on every can,
isn't that
then
nuts?
I can get behind that. If that's what you do on every single can, I still think you're crazy, but at least it's the same. And people will know after the first time that they figure it out to go to the back of the fucking can and look in the fine print. But at least they'll know, right? Like that is part of it. Like that is actually part of it. So, you know, I mean, you have to have categories, in my opinion, right? Like our bombers look different than our 4-pack tall cans. Sure. Our 6-pack cans are, you know, they have a uniform pattern set back in the label. They all look the same, right? Like we have different categories. Our 6-packs look like our 6-packs. Our 4-packs look like our 4-packs. Our bombers look like our bombers. And you know, that's important. It is. And I think a lot of companies, no fault of their own, they just like, they get caught up in being shiny, right? And just like being the shiny penny. And it's like, it's great, but like, people want to actually like buy into you as a brand. So give them the chance to.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't build brand awareness. Can we try this one?
Brand awareness. Great term. Yeah, let's do it.
So someone might buy a sweet beer. Let's say the S wasn't there. It was just like a pink and blue logo. Yeah. You're like, I really like the logo. That's cool. Totally. It's a cool beer. I have no idea where it came from, and I'm not going to search out another beer by this company because I don't know who it is.
Totally. Right?
Okay, what's this one?
They're going to have to really like it to search you out. You know what I mean? So this is the Get Down on It. Oat Cream IPA.
This is the gold winner.
Gold winner.
All right. This better be good. I'm going to have my own little award show here.
The award show.
This is the 0 to Here award.
The 0 to Here.
Can you tell me a little bit about this one?
So this one...
This is unique.
It is, for sure.
This is a different smell.
A little more subtle, not quite as fruity. So the malt bill on this is a little bit different, for sure. It obviously has flaked oat. A similar yeast style as well. Obviously a hazy varietal of yeast. It's a bigger beer. Like, what is it? 7%? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it says 7.
7%. It doesn't drink like a 7%
Not
beer.
at all.
And I think that's where you get into award territory when you make a beer that's a big beer or not a big beer and it tastes like something totally different, right? And I think that's what this beer really hits on, is the fact that it is obviously a bit boozier. It's going to, you know, make your legs wiggle a little bit quicker, but it's very crushable, right?
Back to crushable.
Back to crushable. That's what it's all about.
I fucking love crushable.
I love it because it is the best word to use, but I just know that, you know, true craft beer people don't love it.
What would they use as a synonym?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know what to replace it with. Yeah, I mean,
well, I feel like anything you can
quaffable.
think of just goes back to like the old lame breweries like Labatt and
totally.
Molson.
I mean, dude,
It's like it's crisp.
they weren't making beers like this, so the language
off.
is still being developed, I suppose.
I say we start a hashtag crushable.
I'm sure it's already done.
No, that's gonna be a big one. We're starting it right now. We should probably wrap up soon. You gotta get home. Trends in the beer industry. We talked about trends, but what's next? Can you see what's next?
You know, I think like, dude, stuff in wood is the thing.
Aged in barrels.
Fooders. So we have fooders. We have 325 hec fooders as well. The issue there is just going to be scale, right? Like, I mean,
Totally.
you know, the Four Winds, they've got some pretty big fooders. Ours are a decent size. We'd obviously like some bigger ones, but I mean, for you to ever be able to do a beer big time, you would need such a cellar, right? Like, you know, you look at, you know, Johnny Walker and, you know, Jim Beam and whatever, you know, everything, right? Like Jack Daniels, like they have these just insane cellars of oak, right? Like that's never going to happen. So you're never really going to see that, but you will see every brewery doing some beers in wood. That's just like, for sure, that's already here. It's just going to grow. You'll see sours, right? Just like the IPA, how the IPA started as, you know, just the traditional India Pale Ale, you know what I mean? From the English colonizing of India. Like, you know, you saw that evolve into the hazy IPA. You'll see that, I'm sure, evolve again into something else or maybe revert back. But I think sours are not done. I think that sours, you know, just there's spontaneous fermentation. Like there's so many different ways that people can take a style of beer with the way they produce it that I think you're going to start seeing just a new take on sours, and you probably already are, but just more of it. I think you're going to see more of it and more mainstream. It's also a good style of beer to produce as a brewery because it is pretty quick and not the most expensive to make, you know. So it is good for the old bank account, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I honestly can't say because I didn't see a different style of IPA coming when the original IPA was being, you know, carried all about town, and the sours. I mean, I didn't really get into sours when they first came, to be honest with you, but I love them now.
Really?
I do. I love sours. I love them.
Really?
You just haven't had the right one. You ever had Nectarous from Four Winds?
I think I have.
In the bottle with the cork?
It sounds really familiar.
That beer, like that was, I think that was probably, and it probably isn't even a sour. I probably sound like an idiot, but it is. I mean, it is. It must be. But that beer is just like, I remember having that for the first time and just being like, this is the bee's knees. It was unbelievable. Like really. So if I can get you a bottle of that, I'll bring it by and you can try that. And that'll probably get you on the, that'll be your gateway sour.
Is it just me, or has the dark beer scene taken a backseat a little bit? Because I in the winter specifically, like anyone else, I guess, but like I love a good like coffee porter or like the stouts too. So I used to love the oatmeal stouts.
So from our perspective, we did a winter radler again this year, right? And it was cranberry mandarin, right?
Yeah.
And we did that because I was of the mindset that the person that drinks light beers and fruity beers in the summer doesn't die or go into hibernation in the winter, and they still would drink one of these fucking beers if it was out there. But most people don't offer them. You know what I mean? It does go to coffee stouts and oatmeal stouts and just all the dark, heavy beers. And there's a place for that. Don't get me wrong. I like them too. But you know, we did a coffee stout this year, and it was basically like alcoholic cold brew. It was unbelievable. Like our brewer he really banged it out of the park, and yeah, it sold well. We sold it all good. And then we did a Black Forest cake called Waken Cake, and and that one flew. So you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that one comes back. But you know what? Through it all, that Winter Radler has just crushed all of them. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that they have taken a back seat, but I think it's just because like with all these big IPAs and everything, like you're always going to have people go back to the light, fizzy yellow stuff. You know, like there's always going to be a market for that. Like, you know, as much as Bud Light and Budweiser and Canadian and Coors are losing market share, like to what end? Like how far are you really going to fall before like people are still picking up a 30 pack each? You know what I mean? At least a couple times a year. You know what I mean? Like I think that it is taking a back seat, but I mean, that's only because like people still like easy drinking beer, right? I mean, you yourself would probably
maybe that's
9
why.
times out of 10 have an easier drinking beer than a crazy beer, probably. Maybe not 9 times out of 10.
We're never really into huge crazy beers though. Yeah. Like the double IPAs never got me. The big sours that were like 9% never got me.
You remember Herminator? You remember Herminator from Vancouver Island? It's an ice bock, right? With the big guy on the front of the package. I remember just like, because Granville Island with our winter ale, like that was a monster, right? Like just an absolute monster. And I remember being in the stores, probably selling pallets of that stuff at a government store. And the guy being like, you ever had the Herminator? And I was like, I haven't. And I bought a 6-pack of it. And they told me like, don't drink a 6-pack of this. And I went home and watched a Canucks game and drank a 6-pack of it. And I don't remember the second or third period, like honestly, and that had a place, right? But that was a bad experience, like for me, you know, like technically, like that was almost a bad drinking experience. So I mean, I like the big beers, but you're still only having a couple of them, right? Like I could probably have 6 lagers and remember the second and third, but if I'm having 6 Herminators or, you know, 6 coffee stouts, I'm probably, you know, in a bad way. That's at the end of it.
I usually start podcasts by asking people to describe themselves in a few words. I'm going to end yours instead. Not about you.
I've had a couple of beers.
No, it's not about you. I want you to describe how amazingly epic brewery award shows and parties are. Because I've seen video footage from the Steel and Oak guys at these award parties.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
And I think I'm close, Carl. I think I'm close to wheeling my way into an invitation.
I'll bring you. Don't worry. They won't bring you. I'll bring you. You know what? Festivals. I remember like when I first started, not to give you too long of an answer, but when I first started after I broke my hand, I was the event coordinator and the sales merchandiser. So my job was festivals. Like literally that was what I did. I would go the day early. I would drive up to Penticton, set everything up. The reps would come in. And I would just light it up for a couple of days with them. And then I'd unpack it and take it home. You know what I mean? And they're awesome. Everyone in this industry is just great people. Like that's what I've learned over the years. No matter what you think about people, I think as the competition grows, the industry does get a little bit further and further away from the camaraderie that I've known all these years. And I don't blame anyone for that because this is everyone's livelihood. You know what I mean? And there is, you know, healthy competition breeds creativity, right? And I respect all that. But 99% of the people that you meet in this industry are just the fucking tits. They're awesome, right? So you get a bunch of those people together and you throw free beer at them and some corporate credit cards, and it's a good time. Yeah, honestly, I can't speak of really a bad night that I've had at an award show or a festival. Like everyone's just really good people. Honestly, like-minded, really good people.
Next one that comes up, if Steel and Oak says no again,
did you let me know? Whatever.
Shooting you a text.
What would the next one be? I don't even know, but you let me know.
There's always those summer ones on the island, right?
Penticton. You should come to Penticton Festivals. Is a hoot. It's a really good time. Yeah, it's a good time.
Let's make it happen. I like it. I want to end with, what's the biggest misconception about the craft beer industry? Or just a couple like things that you can think of.
That it's all fun and games, because like I just sold it pretty hard in that last segment, and it's not all fun and games. I can tell you, like it's, you know, it's competitive, and you know, especially going from, you know, I went from, you know, swamping, right, to driving a truck, right, a little bit more stressful, to being an event coordinator, merchandiser, a little bit more stressful, still fucking pretty fun, and then being a sales rep, and it's like, okay, like I live for my numbers, like, you know, you can do whatever you want, you can go hit a round of golf in the middle of a day sometimes, but those numbers better be good. And then I went to being, you you know, a BC sales manager at Big Rock. Well, now like your team's numbers have got to be good. So you got to be on your team. So that gets a little more stressful. Now, you know, being in charge of, you know, sales and distribution and ordering of raw materials and being a partner in a brewery. I mean, there's still a ton of fun. Like, don't get me wrong. I laugh more than I'm stressed, but yeah, I mean, it's as fun of an industry as it is. It's still a business, and it's still competitive, and as great as everyone is, it's still, you know, it's still competitive, right? So
I love it. I love the industry. I'm mostly just like sampling product, but
yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's funny to do this with you when we used to be in the industry together. So it's kind of come full circle, hasn't it?
100% for sure. Where, maybe shoot out Strathcona's Instagram so if people want to check them out, or go grab a beer from them.
Yeah, we're down at 895 East Hastings in Vancouver. So that's right on the corner of Campbell and Hastings, just like a couple blocks west of Clark and Hastings. Open from noon to midnight, 7 days a week. And follow us on Facebook, Strathcona Beer, and on Instagram at Strathcona Beer.
Is midnight late? Isn't that late for tasting rooms?
It's kind of late. Yeah, we're open a little bit
most
more.
Most were like 10 or 11.
You know, one thing that's, again, just to go back to us being part of the neighborhood, like, we're a neighborhood spot. We don't do room bookings. We don't book out the whole room. If you live in Strathcona or you come down to Strathcona and you want a beer, like, you can get in.
We did our 10-year high school reunion there.
That's crazy.
Last year? 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
10 years. Jesus. 29?
That's correct.
That's great. Crazy.
Great quick
I'm a math guy. though. No, that's awesome.
It was good. I think that was my first Strathcona beer.
Oh yeah?
And I had more than one.
What'd you have?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember. That's so funny. I remember.
I think I had one of each.
I remember you guys emailing or whatever, and someone asking me about it, and I was like, yeah, like, that sounds pretty cool, actually. Like,
it was sweet. We had a great turnout. Way more than I thought. We had 110 grad class, and I think 70 came.
Jesus.
That's impressive, right?
That is pretty good. I didn't go to mine. Probably never go to mine.
It was fun. It's fun to catch up. Anyway,
yeah, for sure.
Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. Oh, awesome.
Good to catch up.
Yeah. Oh, you too.
Guys, thanks for listening. As always, I'd love to hear feedback. Hit me up on Instagram, Denny.Dumas. Later.